How is everybody? This is Carter Drew, RealTalk, RealPeople. Um, have an interesting one. This was a user request. Listener, subscriber request. I was told about this interesting clip from a TNT show called Rich and Shameless. And I listened to the clip and I'm like, oh, this is a bit too blatant. No one's this blatant. As you see, the title says, highly favored and under assault, the black woman's womb. And there's been a history of black women's wombs being something of a hot commodity, something that's often played with, toyed with, basically a high topic of discussion in the medical community as well as reproductive community. Everybody seems to want a piece of the black woman's womb and her reproductive capabilities. I did a stream probably about a year, 2 years ago, talking about Henrietta Lacks. And if for you, or for all of you, or for some of you that don't know who Henrietta Lacks is, she is the black woman, African American woman, that cells have been cloned and used to make many pharmaceutical drugs, treatments, to fight diseases. Literally, Henrietta Lacks has her DNA has been used to create so many cures to so many diseases, and her cells have been cloned thousands, hundreds of thousands of times, and the family hadn't received any sort of money. For a long time, they didn't even know that her cells were being used like that. And it's just another case of black women's bodily sovereignty. We'll use that term, bodily sovereignty, not being respected and being used for the gain of others. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this Instagram post because it was an Instagram post. We'll go ahead and listen to it. Fair use. And we will go ahead and read some of the comments, and then we'll kind of dive into this a little deeper because it's a lot more interesting than it may appear to be. So let's go ahead and check that out. All right, and let's go ahead and share the screen. There we go. And we'll share that screen. Okay. So you are seeing on your screen. Now this post, I don't know this person, Gia, the house goddess, follow her on Instagram. This is where I found the post. Shout out to her. Very interesting. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to unmute this. We're going to go and listen to it. They pretty much break it down, what they want. This guy here, that's Peter Nygaard. He's going to be very important in a little bit as I go into his history and kind of what he's into. Not sure the name of the other guy. Wasn't able to actually find out who he is, but we'll have to, maybe I'll have to, if you guys know in the comments or if you guys want to comment who he is, if you guys know, that'd be very helpful, just for my own research and for others that are interested. So let's go ahead and play this.
For $100, we'll pay you for your egg. Cell technology that Peter and I are investing in is called scnt, which takes the eggs of the young woman specimen, takes the egg and takes out the nucleus and puts our DNA in the nucleus.
Okay, so let's break that down. This guy's explaining what he's after. He's after the eggs of young urban women. Now, he's talking to black women from Africa, but he's saying it doesn't matter who. He's saying young urban women, so that can be just about anybody. But specifically, he has these black women here at this table that he's talking to about calling them actually specimens to their face, and pretty much saying that he wants the eggs from the womb so he can go ahead and use that to Well, we'll dig into that a little deeper. But basically, he wants the eggs of the black woman, and he's going to explain why.
It is going to take it out. And this is part of this genetic greatness that we don't see in any other race on the planet. These curvy, sexy black women from Africa.
You see, he's trying to schmooze the women, trying to play into their, you got you sexy black women, you guys have a kind of a monopoly on the best genetics. You're genetically superior, and
Negroes have a kind of a monopoly on this genetic perfection. Black women from Africa. Negroes have a kind of a monopoly on this genetic perfection, and we want some of that. So girls, for $100, will pay you for your egg.
Damn. So, so he explained it in a very simple way. But what they're asking for, he wants their eggs. Now, they don't know what he's going to do with the eggs other than what he's just said, that, oh, these black women have the perfect genetic makeup, and we'd love to have your eggs. We're willing to pay you $100 for your egg. Now, I don't know if that's $100 per egg, or I don't know if he's just going to they're going to take a scalpel and just take a few hundred. I don't know. Either way, $100 is nowhere near worth your eggs, the amount of eggs that you have. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and it's utterly disrespectful. But you have to schmooze them. You got to let them know you're genetically perfect, and we'd love to pay you for your eggs. What are you gonna do? You can't possibly have that many children. How about you just can come up off the eggs? You know what I'm saying? It's really disrespectful, because they don't understand the true value of their eggs. Just like the true value of a man's genetic material, like his semen, or one's blood, or one's blood plasma. They're giving you funky $25 to $50 and turn around and making thousands of dollars off that same blood they gave you $25 to $50 off for. It's ridiculous. And that's pretty much it. Now, the comments are very interesting. Not a lot of people peep this. So I'm like, okay, that's a bit weird. Two multi-millionaire white guys talking to African women. I presume they're in Africa, about harvesting their eggs. I'm like, okay. So let's go ahead, and there was two comments, or there was a comment thread that I thought was very interesting. Let me see here. Oh, this is interesting. They understand all humans were created from the womb of a black woman, as to why they do any and everything to keep us from being protected from them, from eliminating the masculine, confident black men to forcing birth control, destroying our wombs via OBGYNs. Notice how every commercial they show nowadays, it's almost always a white man with a black woman. Been pointing this out for years. Now they're sending a message on the low. Okay, this is interesting. So this kind of gets into where I'm going next with this. Shout out to Kit Kat 1204. In genetics and developmental biology, somatic cell nuclear transfer, or SCNT, is a laboratory strategy for creating a viable embryo from body cell and an egg cell. The technique consists of taking a nucleate oocyte and implanting a donor nucleus from a somatic cell. It is used in both therapeutic and reproductive cloning. Exactly, therapeutic and reproductive cloning. Absolutely, and that's where the mix is here. Now we're getting into the mix. Where's that comment? Interesting. Exactly why they keep pushing abortion to black community so they can rob the melanin fetus and do genetic experiments. I don't disagree with that. This whole Roe versus Wade thing, I understand, but the lives it's going to save and all the genetic material that it's going to save, uh, you guys don't know what they do with that stuff. That's a whole black market itself. Aborted baby um, fetuses and stem cells and tissue. They make so much money off of that. Where is it? It's got to be here. Oh, I thought this might happen. So let me go ahead and read this. This was from a comment from a lady named Carla. It says, removing the nucleus means removing the DNA. So no, they don't want the DNA. They just want the egg so that they can remove the original DNA and insert whichever DNA they want and clone whatever they want. They target these black women because they are living in poverty and are the most likely ignorant, making them good candidates, not because of their DNA or melanin, as many people are commenting. They tell them their egg is special only to brainwash them, but it can literally be done with any egg and the same result will be achieved. I was researching scnt and it can be done with any donor egg. It doesn't matter if the egg came from a black or white woman, especially because the original DNA is being taken out. Like you said, it's just brainwashing when he tries to make it seem like there's something so special about the eggs of a black woman. This community has got to stop being so gullible. And I thought that was very appropriate for this. Because, see, he was trying to, exactly like he was trying to do. You saw him, you heard him trying to big up the black woman, be like, oh, you're so special, you're so this. That's why we're going to give you $100 for your eggs because you're just so genetically perfect. It was just bullshit. just straight bullshit. Fascinating. And she just broke it down there. They don't want the DNA within the egg. They want to be able to take out the DNA that's within the egg and use the egg as a shell for whatever DNA they want to put in the egg. So basically, they just want your eggs to be incubators for God knows whatever they're trying to bring into this world that they naturally can't do. So put that in perspective. Someone comments on her, this comment needs to be pinned. He is exploiting them because they are impoverished. They are improvised, desperate, and ignorant to his actual agenda in this medical procedure, not because of their genetic perfection as sexy black African women. The eggs are just ready-made incubators, boom, just like any other woman's, but for the lower price sale. Those poor women. And that's absolutely true. See, he's trying to make it seem like we're paying you a lot of money, $100 for your eggs. And we don't even know if that was per egg. He was just saying $100 for your eggs. Basically $100 for incubators that they can test and put things into. And because these are black African women, it's the supposition that they're poor, they need the money, and they can just walk up to someone and say, hey, let's do this procedure. It's not super invasive. We just take some eggs. You got millions of eggs or thousands of eggs. You don't need. We just taking a couple hundred. Just it's crazy, and it's playing on the impoverished. It's playing on the ego. It's playing on all these different things, and they can only do stuff like this if there's no one. If these women are on their own, you know what I'm saying? It's very interesting when it comes to being under the protection of a man. There will be situations where this type of man can't even get close to these women if they were under or with a man or if they had a man. But, when you're single, when you make your own decisions, for one reason or another, you get approached by seedy gentlemen. So you just kind of got to know when the fix is in. And then the last comment, Carla, the original poster, presents exactly. I was researching scnt and it can be done with any donor egg Doesn't matter if the egg came from a black or white woman, especially because the original DNA is taken out. Like you said, it's just brainwashing when he tries to make it seem like there's something so special. Community is so gullible. So same exact thing. So now, why did I title this based off of just that clip? Why did I title this highly favored and under assault, a black woman's womb? Because it's not just this clip was what opened my eyes to researching a little deeper. Now, this is black women being taken advantage of, their wombs being taken advantage of, their genetic material being taken advantage of, but it goes way deeper than this. But for those that understand, I will put links to what scnt is. We can actually look at a few. And yes, I know it sounds very interesting, but it boils down to cloning. So we're on Britannica.com. I've also got a couple of National Library of Medicine journals up here. So let's read a little bit. Somatic cell nuclear transfer reprogramming mechanisms and applications. So again, they've already explained it in common terms, but somatic cell nuclear transfer is basically cloning. Okay, putting something in something. Let's take a look at this diagram, and this will break it down. So this is how Dolly, the cloning of a sheep. So this is how Dolly was cloned. You had a clone, original Dolly, information, blah, 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 put in there. Then they had a donor cell, egg cell donor. So let's say this particular different animal. Forgive me, but you guys see here, let's say this was the guy explaining he wants to put this animal's DNA into this animal, just wants to use the cell here. See, someone wants to take the black woman's the DNA from her egg, suck it out, and then replace it with the DNA of whatever, honestly, whatever they want in there. It's like a Frankenstein. And then they're going to reimplant it back into, or implant it into a surrogate mother, whoever it is, or artificial womb, and they will literally clone this original animal. So this is a way of how cloning works. So basically, they're just trying to use those black women as free eggs or low-cost egg incubators so they can test out essentially cloned individuals, cloned people. I mean, this is just conjecture. This is just my theory. Cloned people, clone spliced entities, animal, human hybrid. It can get real demonic, okay? Me personally, this is where I think aliens are going to come from. I don't think aliens are from outer space. I think they're really just, it's going to be a lab experiment. It's going to be literally something you've never seen before. And it'll just be something like a result of this. I'm like pretty sure on that. But that's my own thing. But this is essentially what they're trying to do. And this is the Journal of Natural Medicine. So just replace this sheep with the black woman, and that with whatever else, and that with artificial womb or another person to create that. Now, they're using this for Dolly, but on this other article, they're using this for a couple different things. So they've done monkeys with this, the first non-human primate species with scnt transfer, attract worldwide attention, and then they cloned Dolly in 1997, 1996. Now, they hope to be able to use this technology to be able to bring back extinct creatures. And I think I have an article on that. Hold on here. They want to bring back the woolly mammoth this way, even, dinosaurs this way. If you believe in dinosaurs, stuff like that. So that's kind of what they're into. And this is a breakdown. They've done it with mice. Here's an interesting thing. So it's not just species to species, right? These are examples of types of cloning of intraspecies cloning, meaning sheep to sheep, sheep to sheep, cow to cow, cow to cow. Now, So obviously they're showing they can do it species to species, and they've been doing it a while. This is just what they're putting out. But they're also showing interspecies, meaning they can take these different species and put it into these quote unquote close enough, maybe, other species and still have this animal come out as a baby. So an African wildcat, they can implant that DNA into a cat's egg, and the cat will have an African wildcat as a baby, and vice versa. Well, not vice versa. And a gray wolf, and put the gray wolf's DNA, take the dog's DNA out of the dog's egg, and plant the gray wolf's DNA within the dog's egg, and the dog or artificial womb will have a gray wolf. And this is how they plan to bring back other species. They've done it, for 15-year-old species. I mean, they've been doing this stuff for a while. And this is the type of cloning and other things they try to fund. So you can let your mind wander with the implications of such technology and why, they're targeting certain disenfranchised or women that are either don't have protection or don't understand the science, or for one reason or another are willing to give their eggs away. You can see why they're being targeted. So something you got to keep your eye on. And that's kind of was interesting. Now, when I saw that clip, I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but you'll see here this really interesting, quiet individual. He'll come up. Peter Nygaard. Now, when I saw this, I'm like, who is this guy? This guy looks like I'm like, who is this guy? So let's take a look at who Peter is, because Peter's into some interesting things, very interesting things. Canadian fashion designer indicted on sex trafficking charges, according to U.S. prosecutors. So he's a Finnish-Canadian designer, was arrested in Canada Monday after he was indicted in the United States for allegedly using his fashion business as a facade of legitimacy in order to conceal sex trafficking and other illegal activity, federal prosecutor alleges. So he was indicted on sex trafficking and racketeering charges, and alleges that happened between 1995 and 2020. Wow, that's a long time. So he's already been into some interesting things. There's a couple YouTube video clips I'm going to play. Again, fair use. I'm not going to play them all in their entirety. I may even speed them up. As you can see, he was indicted on luring victim into Nygaard's orbit and keeping them there. Victims were then forcibly sexually assaulted, drugged, and coerced into sexual contact with Nygaard, the indictment claims. Many of the alleged victims were underage girls who came from disadvantaged backgrounds or a history of abuse. Remember that. You need to remember that, okay? Remember that, because I'm going to play something here for you right now. It's crazy. All right, so fair use. Come on. All right. So let's go ahead and I think I'm going to try to speed this up. So this was an interview with Chris Hansen on Peter Nygaard's terminated pregnancy so he could take baby stem cells. What were we just talking about? Peter Nygaard's literally over there with this guy talking about asking women for their eggs. And we see here, Peter Nygaard terminated pregnancy so he could take baby stem cells. Interesting. What is this guy into? Let's listen.
Well, your newest show.
All right, so that's a little. Let's speed it up a little more. There we go.
Is an investigation on Peter Nygaard. Correct.
All right.
And I've been hearing about this guy for years.
Now,
way before he got arrested recently. And I heard that you have girls and everything else like that. I never heard about the underage thing, to be honest. Probably because of circles. And I go, it has nothing to do with that, so I never heard that.
So he's going to ask him about Peter Nygaard. Let's listen to Chris has to say.
I just thought it was some old guy who just liked a lot of girls. There were some really interesting stories about abortions. Can you explain that?
He was obsessed, Peter Nygaard was, with stem cell research and anything that he could get his hands on to preserve his health and youth and to create longevity.
So he wanted to preserve his health, his youth, and promote longevity.
And according to many people involved in the investigation, he actually would impregnate underage girls, have them get abortions, and then harvest the stem cells, the fetuses, to inject in himself under the belief that it would be more beneficial than random stem cells from another source.
All right, let's slow down. Okay, so essentially this guy, you see he's over here trying to pimp these girls for their eggs. He wants to take these eggs. He's showing that he's messing with underage girls and disadvantaged girls, having them have sex with them, then having them abort the fetuses so he can harvest the stem cells so he can inject or essentially ingest them to keep him living younger. And he felt that he had to impregnate the women with his DNA so that the stem cells he would ingest would pretty much enhance his own vitality. It's sick. It's very sick. Yeah, because Vlad will take your shit down. So that's all we're gonna listen to on that one. I mean, that's pretty much what happened. It's wild, actually. This Peter Nygaard guy. You know, once you get to a lot of money like that, things start getting real weird. You know what I'm saying? They get real weird. So that's not super surprising. So let's see here. We are also looking at that's the type of stuff Peter's on. I'll post some links for the good thing about me, everything that we go into, we talk about, I always post the corresponding links to it so you can do your research yourself and validate for yourself. Now, we went into egg harvesting, Peter Nygaard, scnt cloning. Some people were talking about how cloning was a bad investment. Investing for human cloning for therapeutic purposes isn't likely to pan out. Well, they're not going to stop. So it just talks about in vitro and cloning and all these other different things. Yeah, it's a trip. And, you know, that's what happens when we have these abortions and all these other situations that happen. You know, they don't just throw that stuff away. That material is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to scientists and even multimillionaires and people that can afford it. It's, you know, ritual sacrifice by another name. Okay, so let's get into the second part. So I saw that, and that made me want to dive deeper into the aspect of Black women and hysterectomies. So there's a history of this. I looked at here, and I got an article. It said Black women are twice as likely to get a hysterectomy. I'm like, that's interesting. Why are Black women twice as likely? I mean, I've heard this in passing, right? I've heard, you know, my mother, my sister, I heard other Black women talk about, you know, going to the OBGYN and, you know, some women have fibroids, a lot of women go in, next thing you know, they're having a hysterectomy and their, you know, uterus is gone and their womb is gone. So let's read a little bit here. I thought this was an interesting article. All the doctors has to say is that you have tumors, and immediately, if you don't know, you're going to think it's cancer. Dr. Octavia Cannon, past president of American College of Osteopathic OBGYN, says she specializes in treating uterine fibroids in women who do not want to undergo a hysterectomy. This causes many women to agree to hysterectomy even if they haven't had children. All right, so here's what's interesting. Educate their patients about conditions and what it means. So naturally, they hear the word tumor, they're concerned, although less than 1% of uterine fibroids are cancerous. But you heard what they said. All the doctor has to say is that you have tumors, and immediately, if you don't know, you're going to think it's cancer. So it seems like, I guess it's been documented, we'll go through a couple articles, that Black women are targeted to have their wombs taken out, have hysterectomies, emergency hysterectomies, because, oh, you got a tumor. And they don't go into, how, a lot of wombs have uterine fibroids, and 1% of them are cancerous. So it's just like a naturally occurring thing. And the older you get, the more they naturally occur. Now, there are a lot of reasons why they would occur. We'll go into that. But let's keep reading. Let's see. I'm willing to bet there are hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of women who have had hysterectomies, who are women of color, who had a doctor who didn't care and just took their uterus out before they could even blink. And that's the sad truth. A lot of sisters ended up getting hysterectomies because they were told they had tumors and they didn't want to get cancer. They didn't want to die of that. So it was more out of a fear and an ignorance that they had their wombs taken out. And those women can have children. If you have the hysterectomy, you are unable to have children. Treatments beyond hysterectomy. Black men often have to push for a more compassionate approach to fibroid treatment that focuses on pushing to preserve fertility. For many, this may mean searching for a doctor who will listen to them. So doctors just want to take your womb out. That's crazy. Fortunately for Omari, her friend was able to recommend her to a very respectful, thoughtful surgeon who specialized in minimally invasive treatments. The doctor explained Omari's options for preserving fertility, was ultimately able to have her fibroids removed with no complications. So oftentimes you can have your fibroids removed and still keep your fertility intact. Cannon says early detection is key to patients looking for non-surgical approach because clinicians base recommendations on number, size, and type and location of fibroids, as well as severity of symptoms and patient's fertility intention. There's so much that can be done now to help women that have fibroids to keep their uterus. Generational storytelling is important. Interesting. So let's see if it goes into that. Open conversations about fibroids and treatment should be happening not only in the doctor's office, but also in the patient's homes, according to Cannon. She wishes more women were aware of their family history and understood that heavy bleeding isn't normal. Interesting. I could have had these tumors developing very early. I just didn't know. And the crazy thing is my mom had fibroids. Who founded the nonprofit White Dress Project in 2015 after undergoing 2 myomectomies to remove 27 fibroids. We need our mothers, our grandmothers to talk about this. Generational storytelling is so important. Barbara began experiencing heavy bleeding at 14, but her family thought she was too young to have fibroids. Wow. By sharing their experience and proactively seeking treatment, Valbrun believes women with fibroids can receive treatment they need. I absolutely feel the tide changing where women understand there are too many of us suffering, too many of us trying to manage life with uterine fibroids. So, fibroids seem to affect Black women more so than any other group of women, and they're the most likely to get hysterectomies, like I said, due to ignorance and due to the dispassionate doctors, and that's very sad. Let's look at this other article. And again, I will have all these in the description for you guys because it's only right. Why do Black women get more hysterectomies in the South? By Amy Urkanen, February 1st, 2022. Hysterectomies are the second most common surgical procedure for women after cesarean section, although they can be life-saving for women with cancer. They're usually performed for conditions that are painful but not deadly. Researchers have developed less invasive treatments that work for most women suffering from fibroids and gynecological conditions, but many patients don't have access. A deep divide has emerged with some studies showing Black women receive hysterectomies at a rate 3 times higher than whites. So dang, it's not twice, it's 3 times higher. The disparity is even greater in the South. Up to 90% of hysterectomies among Black patients at rural hospitals occur in that region. Wow. They are literally taking these wombs. The consequence of unnecessary hysterectomy can be huge. Total abdominal hysterectomy is a major surgery that causes complications at 10% of patients. Remove the uterus has been linked to poor cardiac health, even among women that keep their ovaries. Younger women have the highest risk of the long-term health problems after hysterectomy, and some of them grieve loss of their ability to bear children. Last year, officials with the Medical Association of the state of Alabama unveiled a statue honoring the mothers of gynecological enslaved women who became the subjects of brutal medical experiments carried out by Dr. J. Marion Sims. The statue represents the beginning of an effort to acknowledge the historical toll of racism on women's health care. However, racial differences care still exist in Alabama and across the South. Not only are Black women more likely to receive hysterectomies overall, they're also more likely to get a total abdominal surgery instead of a minimal invasive surgery with a lower chance or rate of complications and quicker recovery. That is wow. You know, racism comes in many different forms. Just unbelievable. Sisters can get a break. Let's see here. Oh my God. In a report of Human Rights Watch, some women in Alabama's Black Belt, a rural region named for its dark soil, there are also many Black residents reported to have hysterectomies for unknown reasons. A gynecologist working in the area alleges that some doctors train on women in rural Alabama to gain experience before moving elsewhere. Oh my Lord, they're using them as human. Oh my goodness. Doctors use hysterectomies as a form of birth control, woman said. They take your uterus and take your cervix, and then they don't have to bother with you anymore. Lord have mercy. Forced sterilization of Black women in Alabama occurred recently as 1973. When attorneys from a Southern Poverty Law Center represent the Rel Sisters of Montgomery, echoes of that history of eugenics remain in the Black Belt, which also suffers from a shortage of gynecologists and other medical providers. The Black Belt is one of the most medically underserved places in the country. Many counties don't have hospitals or gynecologists. Most women in South to Selma, Montgomery, and Tuscaloosa for gynecological care. Rate of cervical cancer and maternal mortality are also high in Alabama, with a deep difference between white and Black women. In 2020, Alabama hospitals performed 6,619 total abdominal hysterectomies, according to a report by the Alabama Department of Health. The state keeps some data on total abdominal hysterectomies that are required for federal monitoring. Hope to compare these numbers with the rates of alternative procedures. Man, Lord have mercy. Yeah, this is a very interesting article. Check her out, Amy Urkanen. That's demonic. Oh my goodness. So yeah, there certainly is an effort in sterilizing Black women, whether it's in the States or across the diaspora or just across the world. Black women sterilized in North Carolina. Puerto Rican women robbed of reproductive rights. Yeah, got the sterilization of Native American women. I mean, I'll put that article there too. I mean, man. Now let's look at so these are what hysterectomies are. That's what's happening. Let's look at this now. What causes fibroids? Because I was wondering myself. Okay, so what is causing fibroids? What makes Black women 3 times more likely to have hysterectomies? So here are just a couple things, and I think there's 2 articles on this. Yeah. So, and again, these are possible causes. This is interesting. Having less than 2 children, and these are what fibroids usually look like. Excuse me. Having less than 2 children. It appears that the more children you have, the less likely you are to develop fibroids. It's not clear to researchers just why this is. It's important to note that does not mean you should have more children just to avoid fibroids. But it seems like, women are, fibroids seem to be more prevalent in women that aren't having children or having less than, again, 2 children. So that's interesting. I wonder if it's one of those situations where if you don't use it, you lose it. Interesting. Drinking alcohol. Black Women's Health Study noted that in Black women consuming alcohol, particularly beer, there is an association with the development of uterine fibroids. Consider reducing your alcohol intake, especially beer, to once a week or less. So sisters shouldn't be drinking alcohol like that. So maybe are they saying that Black women drink more alcohol than the rest? I mean, I know some of y'all be down in them shots and be down in them. Y'all can drink. So drinking less will help with that. Okay, good. Not eating enough fruit. Interesting. We all know we should eat a variety of fruits and vegetables every day. The study of dietary research found at least 2 servings of fruit a day, especially citrus fruit, associated with lower risk of uterine fibroids. If you're not consistent with eating fruit and vegetables frequently, perhaps just knowing you might be lessening your chance for fibroid. So eating more fruits and vegetables, I can definitely see that. A lot, yeah. Eat better, stop drinking, have more kids. Starting menstruation early. Fibroids are sensitive to hormones, particularly estrogen. This may explain the fact that women who begin menstruating before the age of 11 are more likely to develop fibroids. And that's interesting. I don't know much about women's menstruation. I know it can start, 10 or younger and all the way up to like 12, 13 more, it just depends on the woman's body. There are a lot of environmental factors that cause menstruation early. A lot of people talked about school milk and the hormones in the cow milk cause women to menstruate and develop early. Thus, more fibroids potentially. Vitamin D deficiency. Get outside more. Eat more broccoli. I don't know about dairy. If the dairy got the GMO hormones, maybe chill on the dairy. Eat some broccoli or something, or get more sunlight. Be outside more. So sunlight helps. Okay. Prenatal exposures. Nothing can be done about what you were exposed to while in utero. Oh, wow. Interesting. An understanding of what may be leading to your development is helpful. Exposure to deaths, a man-made synthetic form of estrogen given to women in 1938 to 1971 as a treatment for infertility and premature deliveries. So chemicals while your mother's pregnant with you. Pre-pregnancy diabetes or gestational diabetes can cause fibroids. Being part of multiple pregnancies, such as a twin or triplet, can cause fibroids. Interesting. Exposure to childhood abuse. Logical that being exposed to childhood abuse is tied to physical and mental health, showing the connection to development of uterine fibroids and exposure to abuse in early life. Well, nothing can be done to change what happened in the past. One of the best is take care of your physical and emotional health. So I'm wondering if it's the mental. Interesting. Now this, sisters definitely were having an issue with this. Hair relaxers. So I can definitely see it. Hair relaxers may contain phthalates, a group of chemicals that are considered to be hormonally disruptive. Detectable levels of phthalates found in urine are associated with uterine fibroids. You might consider not using hair relaxers, using them infrequently. So that could be a huge reason why sisters had a higher risk of, fibroids, experiencing major life stresses. Yeah, that's being Black. Genetics. African American are more likely to develop fibroids than Caucasian. While you're not able to change your genetics, I think it's more of all these different environmental factors that cause us to have developed fibroids more than it just being, Black women just have more of them. I think if you cleaned up these environmental factors, you'll find a reduction in that number. But that's just my take. Increased production of extracellular matrix. Interesting. Growth factors, stimulate growth factors, hormones called insulin-like growth factors. So there's a couple different things. So the last little bit here was interesting. So we talked about stem cells, women's eggs. We talked about hysterectomies, the history of that, fibroids. Now we're going to talk about something interesting. Everything's interesting, but you ever wonder, what do they do with those wombs after they take them out? Because if 1% of the fibroids are quote unquote cancerous and they're just taking black women's wombs wholesale, besides breaking them down and decomposing them, what else are they doing with black women's wombs? Uterine transplantation in transgender women. So this is a thing, because you got to wonder where these wombs going. These wombs, it's very interesting. Very interesting. So let's see here. Uterine transplantation. This is from the National Library of Medicine. Uterine transplantation in transgender women. Gender dysphoria defined as a persistent discomfort with one's gender identity or biological sex affects between 0.5 to 1.4% of adult males. Treatment aims at congruence to allow those who experience with optimism psychological well-being and self-fulfillment. 2, although many experiencing gender dysphoria require partial treatment or social transition, others find comfort following surgical intervention to change their external genitalia and sexual characteristics. Traditionally, infertility has been an unfortunate consequence of realignment of transgender person's body with their gender identity. Following a successful clinical trial investigating uterine transplantation, UTX, in Sweden, resulting in 8 live births so far. Wow! So they've already done this in Sweden. They've taken wombs, putting them in other women. Hold on. I'm assuming that's other women. Let's read on. 3 UTX appears to be a viable therapeutic option for women with absolute uterine factor infertility. Okay, so they're transferring these wombs to other women, biological women. More than 42 UTX procedures have now been performed globally. At least 12 live births have been reported. Wow. Following the establishment of the International Society of Uterine Transplantation, ISUTX, the formation of research teams globally, it is anticipated that UTX will make the transition from research to clinical care in the future. Following these developments, speculation has escalated regarding the possibility of performing UTX in a male to female transgender women, which would enable them to gestate and give birth to their own children. So it's been done 42 times and at least 18 live births with biological women. But it is yet to have been done with men, but it's theoretical at this point. Ethically, the consideration of performing UTX in transgender women is primarily motivated by the consideration of justice and equality. Like all women, psychological harm may arise from a secondary to a mismatch between reproductive capacity and aspiration. Transgender women have AUFI and therefore cannot experience gestation. They play an integral role in the expression and consolidation of the female identity. It's considered by many to constitute transformative experience. Legally, under the Equality Act, transgender people are offered explicit protection from both direct and indirect forms of discrimination through characterization of gender reassignment. As a protected characteristic, such male to female transgender women cannot be subjected to discrimination on the basis of characteristic. Subsequently, if UTX becomes an established treatment option for women with AUFI, UK and EU legislation would make it legally impermissible to refuse to perform a UTX in transgender women solely because of their gender identity. So basically, they're saying even if it doesn't work, if a transgender woman asks to have a UTX, you've got to perform it. But then wouldn't that make that a cosmetic surgery? and not like a gender reassignment surgery. Well, I'm confused. Because if it doesn't work, then you're just putting a woman's womb into you. Okay. Anatomical considerations. Uterine transplantation entails transplantation of the uterus, including the cervix, a cuff of vagina surrounding a ligamentous and connective tissue, as well as of major blood vessels to the level of internal iliac vessels. Uterus is now placed orthogonally in the pelvis of the recipient, where it's structurally supported using the uterosacral round and broad ligaments and lateral bladder peritoneum anteriorly in the vagina, paravagina tissues inferiorly. Most UTX procedures performed to date have achieved revascularization through bilateral internal iliac artery to external iliac and to side endosmosis. To determine the plausibility of retrieving a graft from a woman that had subsequent inflammation into a natal male pelvis, the intersex differences in the pelvic vascular anatomy require consideration. Yeah, men and women are different. You've got the calibrated vessels noted, vaginal anastosis. All UTX cases performed to date, the recipient's vagina has been anastomosed to a vaginal cuff or varying length, which is retrieved as part of the graft. These restores the reproductive anatomy, allowing psychological excretion of discharge and menstruation, but also allows direct visualization of the cervix and access to the biopsies, which is the only way to reliably detect rejection following a UTX in the male to female transgender model, which would therefore only be possible following gender reassignment surgery. Okay. You guys can read that. That's how they would essentially do it. Proposed uterovaginal retrieval operation with incision marking. Oh, wow. Let's read this. Despite the number of anatomical, hormonal fertility, obstetric consideration that require consideration, there is no overwhelming clinical argument against performing a UTX as part of GRS, gender reassignment surgery, uterine transfer. However, the increased radicality associated with the retrieval operation, including a longer vaginal cuff and more extensive ligamentous dissection, potentially necessitates the use of a deceased donors. So, alternatively, female to male transgender men may offer an alternative donor pool should they accept the increased risk compared with the standard hysterectomy. Wow. Prior to undertaking the UTX in transgender women, further research should be undertaken, including cadaveric retrieval and implementation consideration. Furthermore, it's recommended that animal studies are revisited to identify potential and risk and determine whether genetic males can successfully. So this is highly experimental. They want to try it on animals first to see if this will work. They're saying that ethically and legally, there's nothing wrong with doing this, except it just may not work. Interesting. India, womb transplant for a transgender woman to carry a baby, May 17th, 2022. Doctor named Dr. Kaushik, who is based in India, was optimistic about his plan to transplant a donated uterus from another woman or a dead person to a transgender woman. Just what we read in the Journal of Medicine. Become so that the trans woman, so that she can become a mother as a normal woman does. What amazed me most was the surgeon is confident he can conduct the surgery with a positive mindset to help transgender women carry a baby. If this is successful, it will become a dream come true for all transgender women to live their life as a normal woman, including becoming a mother. Since transgender women can't get conceived naturally, they do not have ovaries, fallopian tubes, and are able to get pregnant via IVF. Experts had a uterus transplant in their 19th. Okay, Danish artist Lily Elib had a uterus transplant in 1931, but she died after a few months due to complications after post-surgical infection. Womb transplants are rare even from women to women, but there are successful cases reported for cisgender women and resulted in live births. We went over that. There was about 18 live births from cisgender women to women, other cisgender women. What are the risks? Yeah, it's risky. Extremely dangerous and may pose a high risk of death to the recipient. Even after transplant, they still don't have a functioning cervix or vagina to allow the birth canal. So it's like that's wow. So essentially, it's almost like baking a cake. It's like cutting you open to put the uterus in there. You implant the uterus, if it will theoretically work, and then you cut them open via C-section. It would have to be via C-section because they don't have a birth canal. Wow. Blood loss, infection, organ rejection, potential body reaction to anti-rejection drugs. Usually womb transplants is not permanent. It will be removed after 1 or 2 pregnancies to avoid long-term anti-rejection drugs. Oh, so you didn't even get to keep it. You literally just get to keep it for the pregnancy. So wow. That's a lot. Mental health risks, infertility treatment experience, though it is successful. Doctors will not advise their patients to undergo a womb transplant as it's way too risky for the mother. This procedure remains the last resort. So, history of womb transplants I've recorded. In Saudi Arabia, 2000, recipient was a 26-year-old woman who received a donated uterus from a woman who was in her 40s, agreed to remove her uterus due to hysterectomy. Man, could have been a sister, right? The result of the operation is very promising. The patient had 2 spontaneous menstrual cycles before blood flow failed to the uterus, and she had to have it removed after 3 months. After all, the uterus did function for 2 months before it failed. Wow. So yeah, sisters, that's what's going on. And looks like we're just about to hit an hour. So yeah, this was a request. This was very interesting. I actually enjoyed researching this. I learned a lot. What questions do you guys have? Do you think all the information we went through, do you think there is an assault on the womb and reproductive health of Black women? Do you think it's being overblown? Do you think that Instagram video do you think $100 for your eggs is a good deal? I would love to hear your comments, thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, of course. And if you guys have anything you want me to look into and do in-depth research on and provide content for, please let me know. All my information is in the description. And once this is up, I will update with a link and list of sources for your own digestion. As always, this is Courage Real Talk, Real People, and we are out.